I mean, I don't know. Sunday school is always different than normal, but normal what you would have where you just, at least with the way we've been going through it, we have a lot of different things we do. But this one's going to be different because we're going to do kind of a study in names and how you see that used in the Bible. So it'll be interesting, I think, for you. So open up to Daniel chapter number 1. And if you remember, we are at the time of the Babylonian captivity that has just begun to take place on the nation of Judah. And this is one of those points in time when we're fitting that into the chronology of Daniel chapter number 1 here. Let me get to it there. Okay. Daniel 2, Daniel 1. Okay. I need some readers. We're going to read verses 1 to 16 and going to kind of outlay some of the things that are found in there. So if I get 1 to 5, Bill, 6 to 10, Fred, 11 to, I'm going to give you one extra verse, 16. Who wants to do that one? All right. David. All right, and so we're going to pick up right at the captivity, right whenever Daniel is taken captive and some of his friends are taken captive and others obviously are incorporated in there that aren't mentioned. All right, go ahead. Okay, 6 to 10.
Now among them were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name of
Belteshazzar. All right, last one, David.
Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove the servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this manner, and proved them 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, their countenance appeared fair and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat of the king's meat. Blasphemous says unto away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pills.
Okay, so let's look at this a little more specifically. There, in this passage, there are at least 3 words that are synonyms for this nation that's taken them captive. Did anybody see those? Just found right in the first few verses. We know one is called Babylon, right? So I gave you one right there. So there's 2 other names that are given to this country, to this nation, empire. Shinar is a reference to them, and Chaldean. Okay, so whenever you see the Chaldees or the Chaldeans, or you see the land of Shinar, or you see Babylon, all 3 you recognize they are synonyms for one another. Okay, they are just like what we saw with Israel. When you talk about the north kingdom, Israel, you got Samaria, which is the capital city, and it's usually referred to that way. Or you see Ephraim that's used quite often. And Ephraim, even though it's a tribe, it's usually grouped together as the entire nation. Okay, so just to help you kind of get those defined together, you understand that way. Okay, now these young men that are being selected by the king, how would you describe them? These boys of Judah that are being brought in, how are they described in this passage? Okay, we see better looking. What is the words there we see? No blemish. That sounds like something you'd say about a lamb, right? Looking for no blemish. What's blemish? No pimples. No physical defects. Okay. What's the other one we see? There's another one that deals with their looks. Well favored, and it means just simply handsome. Handsome. That's what the word means. Okay. There's another one given there, talking about their intelligence a little bit. What do we see there? Skillful in all wisdom. Skillful means intelligent, and meaning that they are just able to understand certain things. But then you go on and look what else it says here. Not only are they skillful in the sense that they're smart or they're intelligent, but cunning in all knowledge speaks of the fact that they are able to learn quick. They're not dummies, that you don't have to keep telling them the same lesson over and over and over, like some people can be. Right? They're ones that have a way of just picking up stuff really quick. Okay, and then did you see there it uses the word science? What does that mean? Don't throw your 21st century understanding of that word into this word. What does it mean? It's a simple meaning for that word. It means knowledge. Okay, it means simply knowledge. Okay, in fact that's what the original meaning of that word is knowledge. But it means that they're people that are knowledgeable. They understand how to understand. They understand how to be taught. They are naturally already intelligent. So one of the things we're going to learn about Daniel, and we learn about his 3 buddies, is that they are good looking, no blemished, and very smart. Very smart people. Now, why do you think the king's picking these young men, these kinds of men, to be in his court? Why in the world would you even want foreigners to be in your court or in positions of high power in a foreign land? They're not even natives. Why would you want that? Yes. This is all about brainwashing the higher ups so that they will brainwash the lower downs, right? That's all what it is. It's all about completely making them all Babylonian, making them all Chaldean. That's exactly the intent. And the reason why he's not getting dummies up there to do it, because they mess it up. Yeah. And probably the reason why he's getting physically attractive ones, maybe also because they would be well received by the people, but probably also because the king had an etiquette or a standard that he didn't want certain things in his area, his place where he worked. I mean, you remember that when we were going through the book of Esther on Thursday nights that we talked quite a bit about just the way that king was, and he was the Persian king. So you get an idea that this is probably similar to that. Okay, There are things that they're supposed to be done, have done to them in here. Did you notice any of the things that it says that they were going to do to these guys? Not necessarily fatten them up. That's not the intent. Feed them a certain way, but not necessarily just to fatten them up. Well, that's what they're preparing him for that. But what are they doing with these boys? What are the Chaldeans doing? Give me the specifics. Teaching them the tongue of the Chaldeans, so they're going to learn how to speak like Babylonians. What else? Okay, they're going to have their names changed, and we'll talk about that more specifically here in a little while. What else? Means that they're royalty. They're royalty from Judah. So you get an idea that Daniel himself was part of a royal line, and his buddies. They were already high ups anyways at one point. Yeah. Okay. What else? They're going to teach them the learning of the Chaldeans. They're going to teach them the culture of the Chaldeans. Basically, everything about what they are, and they do this for 3 years. Basically, everything that what they are, they're trying to unlearn the old way and reform a new Babylonian young men. Everything about it. Now, here's the hard part that we get to, and this is, well, obviously, maybe it's not hard for most of us, but it would be for somebody who was very dedicated to his God. He's going to change the appetite as well. Change your food. What kind of food are they being offered now? Well, I'm sure they've had meat and drink before. They are part of the king's seed. Babylonian food. And it's not just any Babylonian food. It's not anybody's food. It's the king's Babylonian food. Why is it that Daniel doesn't want to eat this stuff? Because that's what he does. He refuses, he and his 3 friends. There's maybe a couple reasons why. We're not told, but maybe some guesses. Okay, could be because it's unclean. That Jews were big about what they ate and what they wouldn't eat. Yes? That could be also. Could be that it was offered to a god before. I mean, that's an issue all the way even to the New Testament time that you see Christians dealing with, of eating meat offered to idols. And so that's a big situation. Yes? Vegetable stuff that doesn't make you fat, I guess. Yeah. Okay, something of that nature. Okay, so here's the thing. This is complete trying to brainwash in every way. And most people probably, if they were taken captive and they got put in this position, wouldn't have a problem getting to be able to eat the king's food. I mean, who doesn't want to sit around and eat as much as you want of the king's food? But you got people who are godly Jews who are saying, I can't have this. I can't be part of this. And by the way, have you noticed up to this point, there's only one objection that's gone on up to this point. It's, I won't eat that food. It's not, I won't learn that language. It's not, I won't learn that culture. And they're going to change their name, which that itself is going to be a major insult when we get to it. I'll show you that. But even then, they're willing to go with that. But they won't eat the king's food. Now, do you think there's only 4 Jewish boys that got brought in that position? I imagine there were more than just 4. It doesn't mention any more than that, but I'm imagining there's probably more than just 4 that got brought into that position. But these 4 decided, we're not going the way of the culture. Get this now, that one thing for us to say that to ourselves, I'm not going the way of the culture, and you can kind of still go on and live and have no problems. You might have someone make fun of you. You might have someone look down on you. In this situation, you're taking a risk that you might lose your life if you defy this king. But they're more concerned about doing what's right and following their God than they are about saving their lives. In fact, we see that a little bit later. We won't look at that today, but we see that a little bit later with the three boys at a later point. And they're supposed to bow down and worship a statue that Nebuchadnezzar's got for everybody to bow down and worship. And again, it's sort of the same thing, getting them all to be under one headship, under Nebuchadnezzar, under Nebuchadnezzar's God. And those three boys won't do it. And you remember what they said? He says, I'm going to give you a second chance because I really like you. Play the music again. And you remember what they said? You could play the music all day long. We're not bowing. And if our God doesn't deliver us out of your hand, we're still going to be faithful to the end. They had the attitude that they would be willing to lay down everything. Now that's risky. That's the kind of faith God honors, by the way. In fact, it's the kind of faith that Jesus calls all his people to. Too many Christians don't, but it's what we're all supposed to be. Remember, he says you are to take up your cross and follow me daily. It's the attitude of saying, I'm ready to die if I had to. That's not easy, but this is the heart. Now, let's go on a little bit here. One other thing that I'm going to just maybe throw this in, not to be disgusting, but most likely something else that did happen is that they were also probably castrated. You know what that is, right? To have those parts of your body removed. And why? Because, again, this is all about submitting, getting them to be put down low and be forced as slaves, and you're not going to have any rights, and you're going to have basically no way of propagating yourself to the next generation. You are the kings and the kings alone. You're not going to mess with any part of the king's harem in any way. I mean, it's just completely removing them from any of that. And again, would that not be incredibly violating to somebody who's been taken out of their land, and all of this is happening, and yet none of that is being addressed or confronted or complained about except the one thing? Boy, that's convicting, because we're all about our rights. They can't violate my rights here, can't violate my rights there, can't do this, can't do that, this is against this or that. But that's not important to Daniel, and that's not important to his three friends. None of that is. The only thing is about honoring God. That's it. Now, you want to look for examples in the Bible about disobeying authorities. You know, I know people have used certain examples. You see the midwives of the Egyptians during the time of the Exodus defying the king who's telling them to go kill the male babies. You can say you see Peter and John refusing to do what the Pharisees say to do. We're going to preach regardless of what you say. And they use Daniel and refusing to do what the king said to do. But in everything what you see Daniel doing, there's not this kind of attitude of claiming my rights, and there's not this kind of attitude of saying, I don't care what the king thinks, I'm going to do what I want. It's all about me, not about this guy ruling my life. And there's some kind of a arrogant attitude happening at the same time. None of that's happening. It's completely respectful to the king in every way, and it's recognizing that the king has absolute authority over almost everything except this. And I'm going to respectfully dishonor or disobey what he says. See that going on? You say, how do you know that's how he does it? Well, because if you remember, Melzar, the guy who's in charge of these eunuchs, that's what it calls them, Melzar is the one who's obviously making sure they get the king's food, eat the certain kind of food. And Daniel and his three friends request from Melzar that basically we don't want to eat this food because it'll defile us. We're not going to eat this food. And Melzar says, if I present you before the king, he sees you, and you look skinny, and you look like you haven't been eating well, and you look like there's something wrong, it's going to come down on me. I will lose my head for this. Not my position, my head, this right here, gone. And Daniel says, 10 days. Just give us 10 days. Let us eat this vegetable stuff. Let us eat this food, and let God take care of the matter. And if God takes care of us, then we will keep going that way if it's okay with you. And if it doesn't work out, then we will eat this food. So there's putting God to the test in some sense, saying, I'm going to let God take care of this matter. And that's exactly how it played out, didn't it? You go and you read on a little bit further here. It talks about, it jumps way ahead. Look down at the end here. It jumps way ahead to really the end of the life of Daniel, almost right in the very first chapter. But look what it says. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. It tells us that he was raised in a high position, and he stayed in that high position all through his life. And it was really, in some sense, because he had this faith that he demonstrated all the way through his life. That God honored this kind of faith all the way through his life and showed himself strong on the behalf of Daniel. Now, let's go back to the name change for a minute. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an activity here to work through just a minute. But when we think about name changing, the name Daniel, does anybody know, if you got maybe one of those Bibles that has notes in it, what the name Daniel means? Anybody know? Or maybe you know it by just memory? Yeah, you got one of those Bibles, don't you? God is my judge. The name's later going to be changed to Belteshazzar. What's Belteshazzar mean? Anybody? You got that one? Anybody? Well, you see Bel in there. Bel, protect the king. So now he's being, instead of, you say, God, protect the king, it's Bel, protect the king. So now he is being literally changed from being the one who honors God by this name, and now to a name that honors Bel and honors the king above that God. All right, Hananiah. What's that one mean? You got that one? Just him. God is gracious. God is gracious. Shadrach. That's the name he's changed to. What's that name mean now? Inspired of Aku. Inspired of Aku. You say, who is Aku? He's the moon god of the Babylonians. Okay? Mishael. Name means who is like God. To Meshach, who is like Aku. Yeah, the moon god. Azariah, God has helped. To Abednego, servant of Nabu. Again, another god, the god of wisdom, according to their viewpoint. Now, everything's been objected to. This is probably one of the most degrading things for a Jew to go through. To know that my name actually honors God, and now it honors a false god. Honors a false god. Every one of them were being changed in such a way to be in such a way that they were being made to completely adopt everything that was against what they had ever been taught and ever were. To rename a Hebrew who's got a Hebrew name that honors the God of their culture, the God of who they serve, and all of that, to honor a false God is considered blasphemy. It's, in a sense, taking the name of the Lord your God in vain in some way, isn't it? We say taking the name of the Lord your God in vain means saying, Jesus Christ in a way that you're dishonoring it, using it as a curse word, or those kinds of things. That's why we've oftentimes interpreted that, but that's not really the only way in which it can be interpreted. It can also be in the fact that you just take the name and put it down low while you put something else above it. Christians themselves, in some sense, take the name of Jesus Christ in a dishonorable and a vain way by just the way they live, and living an inconsistent life with the name. And they're dishonoring the name, and so everybody that looks at you goes and says, They call themselves Christians. Look what they're doing. What did you just do to the name? You dishonored the name, right? So in that sense, this is blasphemy, what's being brought upon them. And so what I want to do today is, with this lesson, take some time to let you grab these, go around, and give you some things that you see in the Bible that maybe help you understand the Bible in a little more deeper way of looking up words a little bit. Okay?
This Bible says, my judge is God, and God alone knows the future.
Okay. Yeah, names kind of vary. The interpretation of the names vary a little bit. Everybody got one? All right, so we're going to do what's in a name here. Let's see. Bill, why don't you go ahead and read us that opening paragraph? Abram. Yeah, we know a few of those, don't we? Does anybody know one in the New Testament that gets changed? God, there's a couple guys that get changed. Simon is turned to Peter by who? Jesus. And we see Saul named Paul, but it could be that he had two names. We don't know that for sure, but we do know one is changed specifically by the Lord himself. Remember that? He says, your name's Simon, but you will now be called Peter. Okay, and there's a meaning for that. There's a reason for that. Okay, what biblical words or names, places, or names, places, or other words can you think of that end or that include the EL sound as part of the word? I'm going to give you a couple as an example, and I'm going to see if you can think of some others, okay? These are ones that are easy. Samuel, okay? And by the way, the name means heard of God or name of God. Michael, there's one that ends with the EL, who is like God, or what is God like, and that's the meaning of that. And I'll give you one more, and then I'm going to let you take a few minutes to see if you can come up with a few, okay? I got a bunch here, so I'm going to give one that's not so obvious. Bethel, house of God, okay? All right, so see if you can come up with a few real quick. Give you maybe two or three, and then if you can't, we'll get back. I'll give you about 30 seconds. See how well you can do. 30 seconds, 40 seconds, something like that. Also got a test to see how well you know some of the things of the Bible. You only think of one? There's a very prominent one that we talk about this time of year that you should know. Shh. Say it out loud. Let people come up with it. Okay, about 10 seconds. See what you come up with. Stop. Okay, let me give you let's see what you came up with, and then I'll see if I got some more that you don't have, all right? By the way, the reason why we have L at the end is because it's the name of, or it's not the name of, but it is a word that means God, okay? So when you see L at the end, like Daniel, it has to do with God. God is going to be in the name, okay? So give me some that you got. Go ahead. Give me one. Israel. Good one, yes. And Israel means Prince of God. Okay? Any others? Yeah, I don't have that one in there, so someone look that one up and give it to me. That's one. You know how I did this? I went on a Hebrew website and I looked up names that end in EL, names that end in, and what we're going to look at the next one here to see. And I got like hundreds of names that are biblical names. Yeah. Okay, that's a good one. Thank you. Any others? Go. Emmanuel. What does Emmanuel mean? God with us. Okay. Any others? There's one that's also prominent at this time of year, but is also found in other parts of the Bible. But this name's very prominent as well at the Christmas season. Fred L. Bill is not an EL. Here's see if I can start it off. Gabriel. And his name means mighty of God. Mighty of God. Ezekiel means God strengthens. Yeah, I'm not sure that's Hebrew, but it's got an EL in it. Maybe it means God something. Yeah. Mishael, that was in one in here. Okay, and I don't have that one down, I'm sorry. Well, we already said it. Mishael means who is like God, right? Okay. Michael, we got that one. Mishael and Michael are similar in their meaning. Because Michael means who is like God as well. Okay. Any others? Joel, yes, Joel. It is, the Lord is our God. Okay. Huh? Ishmael, God has heard. Remember how that name came about? If you remember that God heard the cry of Hagar and saved Ishmael. I'm going to give some other ones here. Nathaniel means gift of God. Peniel, face of God. Other ones that we haven't said. We got Ishmael, Israel, Emmanuel, Michael, Gabriel, Joel. I think every other one I've got on here, so that you guys have said. You did good. Okay, let's go to the next one. So you get a little bit, when you see L in there, you see that people were very, sometimes you say, well, we don't study that deep into stuff. There's a reason why they changed their names, because the names meant something to them, okay? And there's a reason why you see names, even the Bible defines names as meaning something many times over. So names are important to know. All right, number 2. What biblical words can you think of that include the Jah, or Y-A-H, J-E-H, or J-A-H, sound? Now, we're looking for sound, not so much the spelling. I'll say it as part of the word. Then it says, think of the sounds, not the letters, since we typically spell these words with an I in English. Hold on, before we do that, I want you to I'm going to give you one specifically, then I'm going to give you some opportunities because I'm going to steal yours. Yahweh is is the name of God, but I want you to see ones that have the name of God in it. And usually when we talk about the name of God, you're going to see something like this. I'll give you one. Hallelujah. That means praise to Yahweh or praise to Jehovah. Okay? And it's a specific. It's not just saying to God. It's now specifically to the name of this God. Okay? So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I want you to come up with some Yahs that you see or things like that in the Bible, if you know any. A lot of the kings actually have that at the end of their name, if you remember some of the kings of Judah. Some prophets have that at the end of their name. You keep it You know, you can pronounce them more the more you read them, right? The more you study them. Get better at it. You can't even spell it in your own language. About 10 seconds. Okay, give me what you got. Some of them. T-Day, give me one. Elijah. Elijah is one that I don't have, but good. It probably means something that the Lord is this or that. I don't know. Okay. Say it again. Zedekiah. I'm guessing you got one. I don't have it on my list, so. Okay. I have not Zephaniah, but I have Zechariah, which means God remembers or the Lord remembers. Okay. Other people. Hilkiah. Okay, don't have that one. Good job. I should have just brought the whole list. That's not actually a Bible name. That's a name that people say, surprisingly. No, Yeshua is not. It's something that you hear people say that Jesus is called, but that's not said in the Bible once. Yep, say it again. You know what? It may be. I don't know. I don't have that one. That's a good one. Does it mean the Lord is rest? Lord provides rest? Okay, good. Jehoiada. Okay. Man, you guys got a bunch that I didn't even come close to getting. Isaiah is one I got, and Isaiah means the Lord is salvation. Jeremiah means, here's an interesting meaning for this name. It can mean the Lord throws or loosens, or Jeremiah can mean also the elevated of the Lord. One of the two is what that name means. I do. Uriah means the Lord is light. Uriah the Hittite. The Lord is light. Okay. Nehemiah. No. Man, I didn't put enough on here. I should have just filled it up. Here, I'll give you what I got. I got Amaziah. The Lord is strong. Isaiah. The Lord is salvation. Zechariah. The Lord remembers. Uzziah. The power of the Lord. Jeconiah. The Lord establishes. Jeremiah, which I told you that one. Hezekiah, the Lord strengthens. Uriah, the Lord is light. Obadiah, servant of the Lord. By the way, I want you to look up this one. Psalm 68:4 real quick. Look up that verse. Someone read it for us. Just to show you how God's name is used. Psalm 68:4. Got it? Go ahead and read it real loud for us. By his name Jah or Yah. So he's got the name Jah. Well, it's that what we're seeing in all of these names here, hallelujah, it's spelled J-A-H, and Messiah, you're seeing a part of that name. And so that name is there. So you say, what is the name? Well, it's actually, whenever you were to try to pronounce it, in the Hebrew, if you were to look at it, they call it what they call it is the tetragrammaton. Anybody ever heard that phrase or that name, tetragrammaton, or that word? Tetragrammaton means it's made of 4 different letters, but none of them have vowels in between. So it'd be Y-H-W-H. And so to pronounce that, people have said Yahweh, and people have also put in made it into a Greek word, and they've called it Jehovah, and they put letters in between those letters to make it, or vowels in between those letters. So when you see Jehovah or you see Yahweh, that is the name. I do think it's interesting that whenever you read modern Jewish writings, even up to this time, they won't actually spell the whole name. They'll spell part of the name, leave a dash, and then spell the rest of the name. And it's their way or their attempt of not taking the name of the Lord in vain. That's what they're trying not to do. But I think it's interesting that all the names of people in the Bible have the name of God in them. many times over. So even though they tried to avoid writing the name, it's written over and over and over and over by their own names. So what were they doing by putting their names together like that? They were connecting themselves to this God, right? They were his people. They were his people. Okay, that's important. Now, yeah, and so I mean, looking back now at one of these names, Azariah. It's not just the name God, El, or the word God. It's the name of God, Yahweh, in that. And now all of a sudden it's changed to servant of Nabu. Yeah, this is completely almost utter blasphemy. Now let's go on a little bit further here. Yes.
Isn't Uriah the name of the man that King David had killed?
Yep. He was the Lord, or the Lord is light. Okay. Let's go on number 3. How could we consider the changing of these young men's names as an act of blasphemy? I've kind of given that to you, but maybe you can reword it. Any thoughts? Perry family's welcome to speak up if they want as well. So, thoughts? Okay. All 4 of those boys had their names attached to God in some way, right? And now it's been taken away to honor a false god or false gods. Okay? Would that be considered blasphemous to a Jew? Yeah. I think it's interesting throughout the book of Daniel, even though he's called Belteshazzar, most of the time he's referred to as Daniel. The name doesn't change very often. Even though you see him called that a few times, he oftentimes refers to himself as Daniel. Even though they called him Belteshazzar, he still called himself Daniel. It's sad that a lot of people only know the 3 Hebrew children by their bad names: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. If I was to ask most of you before we got here, what were the 3 Hebrew children name, you would tell me Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. What's their Hebrew name? Mishael, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so taking again back to that 3rd commandment idea of taking the name of the Lord your God in vain has more than just using God's name as a curse word. It actually goes even deeper than just, putting God down lower. It's, we talked about it when we were going through the book of James about using God's name or swearing on God's name and not keeping your word. Lying can fit into to taking the name of the Lord your God in vain. Using God's name as an oath that you don't keep. And that can be considered blasphemy. But this is blasphemy, isn't it? This is in a sense violating that commandment to some level. Okay? Let's go to number 4 because we're going to get into more specifics on that. What other instances of blasphemy in speech or actions can you identify in our culture and possibly in your own life, past or present? Give me some OMG. You hear that? What is that meant to do? Just shorten saying, oh my God, in such a way that it dishonors God. Right? Or you hear people say Jesus Christ and they're not praying or talking in some kind of a reverent way about him. Right? Yeah. Or how about this one? Gosh. What are they doing? Well, I didn't say it, but God knows your heart. It doesn't really matter whether you said it in a different way. It's still the same thing. I'm being specific here to kind of give you some ideas and to confront some thoughts. Okay? Yes. I'm not sure I know that one. But it was a way of dishonoring the name of Christ. Okay. When you hear people using God and they say it in a filthy way, that God would condemn somebody, and they use the word damn in a way that's a violation of that. You understand what I mean? I'm not using it in the wrong way. To damn means to condemn. And when you hear people say that, they're blaspheming, right? By the way, if I was to use all these words this way, they could all be right. You realize that? If you hear people praying, oh my God, and they're not blaspheming, they're calling out to God. They're calling out to the God that they love. They use Jesus Christ in such a way that they're calling on the one that they love. Or even you see the Bible talking about God condemning people, and that's not necessarily wrong in the way it's used. But it's the heart is the issue, isn't it? That makes it blasphemy. Right? That's it. And so out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so whenever you see people doing what they're doing, remember Jesus said what comes out of the heart, one of the things that comes out of it is blasphemies. Blasphemy. You can be on the edge of doing it, right? Yeah. Yeah. Well, here, let me just give you another one that Jesus actually confronted to help us see how even that's not, just if I don't say that, I'm off the hook. Remember Jesus talked about people swearing on the temple as opposed to swearing on the gold, or swearing on the altar as opposed to swearing on the gift on the altar? And it's dealing with the same thing. Well, as long as I don't swear on that, I'm free from the oath. But if I swear on that, I can say it all I want. It's not really blasphemy. And then Jesus actually makes the point, you can't swear on anything without it being connected to God somewhere. Because he's the one who rules heaven and earth. All of it belongs to him. And so for you to make any promise and not keep it is, in a sense, blaspheming God. Right? So just because I didn't say swear to God or the other way doesn't get you off the hook. You understand? You got to think deeper than just semantics. You understand what I'm saying here? I don't mean to get onto this. This isn't even in my notes. But just making the point. God cares about the heart. And yes, does he care about your words? Yeah, he does. But it's out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Okay? And again, you could see for a Jew who had such a concern about not dishonoring the name of God, and now all of a sudden they own a name that not only dishonors God, but puts him down as though he doesn't even exist. It had to have been extremely painful to them. Do you get that? I know we're spending all that time on this one little subject, but that is important, okay? Let's go on one more thing, and then we're done. Okay, one more thing, and then we'll close. Any thoughts on that? Bill, were you saying something or about to say something? Again, the issue is the heart. And you make sure the meaning behind your word is in a biblical sense, right? The meaning behind the word is a biblical way, right? Because those words are found in the Bible. It's a matter of what you mean it right, the way you mean it. You understand that, right? Okay? And yet we still do it as Christians. They call it Christian cussing, which is just as bad. Yeah. Well, I just say don't say it. Yeah.
Phrase, damn you to hell.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can't handle it.
Yeah. All right, we've covered the topic a little bit. We got it? All right. Let's go on. Daniel 2, 48 and 49. Go ahead and read the last part. Who wants to read that for me? Daniel 2, 48 and 49. Yep. Okay, So this is where we go. We again can connect this a little bit to the Christmas time. Who do we see show up at in the Christmas stories? Who shows up? Oh, I didn't say three. The wise men. The wise men. Yeah, but where do the wise men, it say, came from? The east, which is probably connected to Persia. But where do we first see wise men show up in the Bible? Right, where we just read. The first time you see them show up is right here, and it's connected to Daniel. And it's interesting that those wise men, whoever they were, how many there ever were, where exactly they came from, it's interesting that they knew about this one that would be born King of the Jews. How would they know that? It's most likely, if we're going to look at a source of information where they got it from, would come all the way back from the book, from Daniel's time. And if you read the book of Daniel, it spends a lot of time giving prophecy about the time and when Jesus would come on the earth, right? It spends a lot of it, if you're familiar with it, it gives you some very specific time in which he would come. In fact, chapter 2 that you just got done reading out of talks about the king whose kingdom that will never end would come in the days of that fourth kingdom that's mentioned in those prophecies. The fourth kingdom is, anybody remember? You got Babylon, Persia, Greece, what's the last one? Rome. And in the days of the Roman Empire, who would come on the scene that would be a king? That would set up a kingdom that would fill the earth. Jesus Christ would come in those days. Did he come in those days? Is the kingdom of God still going? It's not in the same way that the Roman Empire went, where you had domination by force. It's a different type of kingdom. It's a kingdom in which people humble their heart to this king and submit themselves to this king. And that's through the gospel, right? And it isn't just stayed in one local area. Where's it at? It's all over the world, even to this day. The reason why we're meeting in little Podunk, Ottawa, Iowa, small town Ottawa, is because the kingdom has made its way all the way over here, hasn't it? In the hearts of people. And it's still spreading. We have people that we send missionaries out that are, one of the missionaries we have is to the island of Guam. I think out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the ocean, and yet the gospel's going there, right? That's the purpose of the gospel spreading. And Daniel is that person, most likely, that becomes that first wise man. All right, let's finish with questions, and then we're done. Number one, how was God's sovereignty over the affairs of the kings and men demonstrated in the text today? Yeah, gave favor in the eyes of in a sense, in the eyes of an enemy. Okay, what else? Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the book of Daniel is full of the fact that God, one of the phrases that the book of Daniel repeats over and over is that God rules in the kingdom of men. I love that phrase because it tells us he doesn't just rule over one nation, Israel. He works in every nation, including our nation today. He's ruling. And even though you don't like who might be in positions of power or who's your governor or who's your president or who, whatever, he's ruling. Ultimately, the Lord is still ruling and using and working through. It says there in there, even the basest of men. He works through the basest of men. Okay? Any others? Thoughts on that? All right. Number two, how does our position in Christ help us to relate to the trials that God brings into our lives? Okay. purpose to honor him no matter what comes, right? Did Daniel do that? In a sense, he was no matter what trials God allowed to come in Daniel's life or Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah's life, they purposed to do what? To honor God. Yeah. Number 3, would you pay money to see a movie where the actors would regularly use your mom's or best friend's name as a slur or curse? Why not? You dishonored. Okay, so now let's go to the next question. Do you allow the same to happen with the God who created you and saved you from your sin? You might be violating that one then, because I imagine that's there. It's violating it usually, oftentimes, even in PG movies and probably G movies. Sometimes God's name is brought down, right? We as Christians should care about what we hear and what we see. You know, we can't necessarily do that out there in the world and shield ourselves from every little bad thing that can happen, but we can in our own homes, right? We can in our own personal lives, and we should. Remember, David said, I'll set no wicked thing before my eyes. Does anybody do that? Not asking you for confession day, but does anybody do that in their own heart, in their own life? Let things in there that they know shouldn't be there. Okay? There's one of them, right? Can it be hanging around with people that have no honor or things of God, no concern for the things of God, and you making them your best friends? Can that be one? Does God care about who you hang around with? Yeah, we were in the book of Proverbs earlier this year, and in Proverbs, one of the things that you see the dad or Solomon doing with his son is he's saying, son, don't hang out with those people, because they will lead you astray. You know, as a parent, you have a responsibility to care about who your kids hang around with, right? And who they're going to be friends with, and who they're going to fellowship with, right? And even as believers, we should be careful about those kinds of things. That doesn't mean you can avoid the world. You can't. You live in it. But Jesus did say, as he was praying in his high priestly prayer, is not that I'm asking you to save them out of the world, but that you keep them from the world. Does that make sense? You don't let the world influence the way you think and act and behave. Okay. How are you connecting that? Okay. All right, let's go on one more, then we're done. How would you use someone's name or the meaning of his name as an opening to share the gospel? Last one. You may not know everybody's meaning of a name, but a lot of people share Bible names, okay? Then you got a springboard to talk about what? Yeah. How many people know somebody in your life that has a biblical name? How many people know a person named John? That's a biblical name multiple times over, right? How many people know a person named, Luke? Matthew. You should all know Matthew, right? Okay. What? There you go. Well, that's 2 biblical names. There you go. So you got what I'm saying? That you could use names, you can use a little bit of your knowledge of the things of God to be able to use as springboards to open up an opportunity, a conversation to talk to someone about the Lord Jesus Christ, right? But as people, we need to be concerned about what the Bible would say blasphemy ultimately is. And I think that's what our lesson theme has been looking at here today, is not just not just traditional uses of God's name being used in vain, but multiple ways that the Bible describes it being done. Okay? That we need to be careful that we're not being just like the world in a different way. Does that make sense? Okay? As believers, you should not be people who do such a thing. Do you know how bad God said it was in the third commandment, that you take my name in vain? I will not hold him guiltless that takes my name in vain. God has a pretty high standard of how we use it. Right? Okay. All right, let's pray. I'm going to ask Wayne, can you pray for us as we close?